I'm essentially going to introduce the next session on why GeoShare. Some of you may have heard elements of this before, but for those of you who have not, we have numerous global data sets on agriculture environment these days, and some of you may recognize these acronyms from different countries, from the Netherlands, Germany, US, Austria, and so on. And the user community is often confused. We often get these questions of which one should I use, why should I use it? And the reason people use it is often based on using a data set of one of their friends or using a data set that's consistent with something else they have. There is no real rhyme or reason on which one you should pick and choose. The problem with these data is often the lineages of these data is not always clear. So sometimes you have two different data sets, but one is just simply a derived version of another one with certain assumptions. There are large inconsistencies between these data. I'll show you a few examples. The one thing that I often say is that all data are models. All of these kinds of data are models. They're not measurements. So people often think of these land use data as measurements. Someone went out and actually measured the size of a farm. It's not like climate data where you have an instrument measuring temperature and rainfall, and even those data are interpolated afterwards. These are all models. They have embedded assumptions, and these assumptions are not always well understood. And so you often have people using these data, assuming that they are real data, in very inappropriate ways. Here's one example. What is this a map of? Any guesses?
Arable land?
Yes, it looks like a map of arable land, but in fact it's a peer-reviewed data set of infrastructure area. And the reason that this looks like a map of arable land is that one of the assumptions embedded within the data was that people live in places close to agricultural land. So they started with some map of infrastructure area, but they had some differences. They had to allocate the differences. They allocated it using agricultural land as a proxy. Okay, so this was an embedded assumption that's in peer-reviewed literature. It passed the peer review process, and then you get a map that looks like a map of arable land. While in fact, if you look at the nighttime lights of the world, you know clearly, for example, that you don't have a lot of arable land in the prairie provinces in Canada, or not a lot of infrastructure, right? It's all wheat. So this is a peer-reviewed data set, not to pick on somebody else. This is my own map of pastures for Australia. I knew this problem when I published this. Does this have a pointer here? Yeah. So this area, where you see suddenly there's these sharp lines, is because this particular state, or you call it province in Australia, reported zero pastures or very little pastures for that particular state. I couldn't figure out why, but in the end, when I had to publish it, I can't just wipe that off, right? So I had to put in zero pastures in that particular state, and so you get these sharp dividing lines. This is peer-reviewed literature. This is an example that Stefan and I faced based on our old data sets. This shows the amount of irrigation from Stefan's data set that exceeds the amount of cropland in my data set. So all the blue areas, it's fine. All the places where you see these reddish colors are places where irrigation exceeds total cropland area. This is a problem. So when someone takes my cropland area data and Stefan's irrigation data and tries to build a model, they will have inconsistencies. So this is why we started thinking about GeoShare. This is a slide borrowed by from Stan Wood, who was one of our original spiritual leaders, I would say, of GeoShare. And this is what he calls the horondogram of global crop distribution data. Why do we have these kinds of problems? Well, it's because these data sets were created in inconsistent ways, because different people are working with different assumptions. So for example, our group created a map that now is called EarthStat. Anyway, we created a global cropland map based on, we created a global crop distribution map based on a global cropland map, some subnational crops data, and some assumptions based on GAAZ. Stefan built something called Mirka 2000, which uses some of our data, but also brings in other data on irrigation. And then you all heard about SPAM. SPAM takes some of these data, but also brings in other data and other assumptions. And you have these three different data sets that don't necessarily match with each other. And then of course, you can compare these against FAOstat or AgriMaps or other products, and you find inconsistencies with those as well. So we have a problem. The first thing is, I think peer review is insufficient. In in the scientific community, we think of peer review as being enough. Once it's a peer-reviewed data set, it passes muster. Often it's 1, 2, or 3 reviewers who looked at it, and often these reviewers may not be the experts. And you see this problem now in the scientific community with p-values, and I'm sure you've read the literature in the last year or two. In the epidemiological literature, I think they've tried to reproduce something like 50 different studies, and only 6 of them have been reproducible. So peer review is not enough. Second, metadata is not enough as well. I hear this question all the time, why don't you provide metadata? You can provide metadata, but you don't necessarily provide all the assumptions within metadata on how your data set was built, or the appropriateness or usefulness of a particular data set. And secondly, even if you do that in your metadata, you can take a horse to the metadata, but you can't make it read it, right? You often find people who have used a data set, even though it explicitly says do not use the data set for a local case study, you'll find it being used. The last thing is this is from Stan Wood's message, horses for courses. People create data sets for different purposes. So if PRI is using a lot of their data for local development applications, and if they have an expert somewhere in CIAT or ILRI who tells them, look, this particular area doesn't grow beans, we grow cassava there, they can take an eraser and they'll relabel beans as cassava, because that's what they want to do. They have an expert who tells them that. You can't put that into a scientific paper, so I can't do that sitting in a university, taking an eraser and changing my labels. But Stan says that that's what they do. That's horses for courses. They're using their data for development work. They're not necessarily trying to publish it in peer-reviewed literature. So the GeoShare approach, the answer to this was, first was to collaborate. So let's not develop these diverse data sets. Let's bring the leaders developing these data together to work together to harmonize the data. And second, to look at diversity, to provide a diversity of data sets for different purposes, to really embrace horses for courses. And you'll hear about this. Transparency. Often, as I said, the lineages of these data are not clear. We want to have open source data and open source workflows. And finally, to also talk about operationalizing these processes. As Tom mentioned, often these data creation are one-off efforts. We created a map for 2000, you get some other funding later to do something else, you create something for 2005. Unlike the climate data sets, which are now operationalized, you keep getting updates every few years, the global land use and agricultural data are not. And this is Stan's vision that maybe we can have a potential harmonogram of these data sets and not a Herondograph. So this was his vision when we first started the GeoShare pilot project, that maybe we can create a way where we can start with the raw data itself and harmonize, for example, gross and net land areas and total rain-fed irrigated cropland areas first before feeding into these different products. Thank you.